Okay, in continuing with the Trump situation, the Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, uber progressive, has indicted Trump on the Stormy Daniels hush money thing, which is completely bogus, as we've reported. Now there are two lawsuits against Bragg himself and his office. They've been filed by the Heritage Foundation. And joining us now from Washington, D.C., is Mike Howell, the Director for Oversight Projects at Heritage. So tell me about, succinctly, so even I can understand it, what the lawsuits are.
So back in March, right after the indictment of President Trump, which was, unprecedented in our entire history as a country, we submitted through, New York state law information request to Alvin Bragg. We want to know who he was coordinating with in the lead up to these indictments, whether it be the White House, Department of Justice, members of Congress on the Democratic side. Very simple question that we were entitled to ask under Freedom of Information laws. We also asked in a separate action about the legal representation he received from various white shoe law firms in the course of these proceedings. It's very curious to us that these huge behemoth American white shoe law firms are doing a lot of his litigation work when he commands, one of the biggest DA offices in the country. So those are the two information requests we made. We were stonewalled, and we decided to sue on it. And so late last week, we filed these lawsuits, and we think that since Alvin Bragg is essentially indicting Trump or has indicted him for his record keeping, he said, President Trump didn't keep his business records in proper order, that Alvin Bragg looks like somewhat of a hypocrite here, because he can't even turn over basic document requests that we're entitled to under law. And so this is going to play out in the courtroom up in New York.
Federal court or state court?
State court. It's a Freedom of Information law, which is a distinct body of law in New York, as opposed to the Federal Freedom of Information Act. So we're in state court in New York.
Okay. So if I read between the lines, and correct me if I'm wrong, you believe that DA Bragg coordinated with outside counsel or businesses that hate Trump.
I believe that to be the case. This has played out over and over again, through all the targetings of President Trump, where it's not just one entity alone acting in a vacuum. You have interests, whether it's financial or coordinating, whether they're in government or outside government, that are the same players behind a lot of these things. What we do know about Alvin Bragg is that he was a prolific communicator on his personal device. This has been written about in a book by someone who used to work in that DA's office, how Bragg just basically lived off his cell phone. And so that's what we want. We want those cell phone records. And it is a basic tenet of Freedom of Information laws that any government business transacted on any device is in the people's domain, and the people have a right to inspect those records. And so what Bragg has basically told us, the Heritage Foundation, is one, he can't keep those records. He doesn't have the systems for it. And two, we don't even think you deserve to get them. It is a basic flaunting of the simplest of laws. With electronic communications in 2023, these things should have been turned over in a couple days' time. The fact that this is drawing out into court in New York is a complete, slap in the face to basic transparency. It's also Bragg wasting New York resources at a time where the city is just under siege from violent crime and decay.
Okay, but you know that the press is not going to cover this. They haven't covered it, correct?
Absolutely. I think the press, from the Oversight Project's vantage point, is part of the corruption scandal, whether it's what's happening, with Biden or Hunter Biden that we just talked about, or a lot of the FBI investigations. We know that the regime and the corruption operates through the mainstream media. So we aren't expecting the mainstream media to cover this. Frankly, I think a lot of folks on Capitol Hill or otherwise who are waiting for the breakthrough moment where CNN and others come to their senses, that's not going to happen.
No, that's not going to happen.
And I think that's an advantage.
There's one other legal thing that hasn't been defined. In order to bring this charge against Trump, there has to be an overriding felony, and Bragg will not tell anybody what that is. Remember, he was asked about it, and he goes, I don't have to tell you what the why we're prosecuting this and what effect it had on the people in New York State. He still has not defined that. Is that part of your lawsuit to try to find out what the overarch crime is?
Absolutely. I think that is at the center of this coordination aspect. If you're searching for some sort of hook just to be the first one in history to indict, former President Trump, I'd imagine that would come up in the conversations, whether it be with the Department of Justice, the White House, political backers, or even members of Congress. Representative Goldman up in New York is a prime suspect in this coordination case, and to date, neither his office or Bragg's have denied any sort of coordination between them. This could be over in a day if Alvin Bragg just said, no, we did not coordinate at all, and here's the record search to prove it. Instead, they're drawing out this whole entire process, which leads us to believe that such coordination and search for a type of precedent or cause to go after President Trump exists.
Okay, you know that the New York courts are probably going to try to stonewall you, right?
We see that in federal court. I expect the same in liberal jurisdictions like New York. But this gets back to the point we raised about mainstream media. We know what we're up against, whether it's the media or the court systems. It's not about breaking through those. It's about demonstrating to the American people that the systems as they're currently, played out do not serve the public benefit. So demonstrating that the New York court system and the DA's office is willing to cover up this type of conduct is the road we go down here, then that's a case we will make to, the American people and others, that basic laws are not being applied evenly to those who occupy high political office, whether it be the White House or the DA's. Exactly.
Look, as I said, and first of all, is the Heritage Foundation pro-Trump? Are you guys supporting Trump?
We're a 501c3 organization, so we don't get into the politics of it all, no endorsements or anything like that. We're primarily an educational foundation, which means that we go out and sue for public records that are in the educational interest of this country. And I can think of no better case than such a historic and unprecedented indictment that has throttled our entire electoral system by another instance of major interference in an upcoming election. But we do not engage in any sort of politics. We're an educational foundation.
Now, you don't use the word, but I certainly do, corruption. I believe that our legal system, justice system in America is corrupt, thoroughly corrupt. And all I have to do is point to the simplest matter. 5 years to indict Hunter Biden on 2 tax beefs and a gun beef? 5 years? I mean,
I'm sorry, Bill.
Go ahead.
It's absolutely insane. And when you were talking about your monologue, what came to mind for me is that on the very similar charge, actually the exact same charge, lying on a gun form about drug use, the Biden administration just charged Deja Taylor down in Virginia 18 to 24 months. She was a mother whose child obtained access to the gun, and she had lied on her gun form about drug use. And so you're looking at 2 years in prison for an African-American woman in Virginia, whereas the son of the president is pleading down to misdemeanor and pretrial diversion. That, to me, is proof positive of the dual standard, and I absolutely will use the word corrupt. We're seeing this play out with bank accounts and LLCs taking in millions of dollars from foreign adversaries. The corruption is evident, and I think we're living in the most corrupt time in American history right now.
I can't disagree with that, although U.S. Grant's administration was pretty damn bad. All right, Mike, please keep us posted on any developments in this lawsuit against Alvin Bragg, and we appreciate your time very much tonight.